Good morning. It is an honor to be with you today, and I would like to start by applauding the initiative of the Basque government to discuss an issue that is fundamental to achieving gender equality and combating gender-based violence, the role of men and boys in gender equality. Today I will highlight the importance of the Council of Europe's guidelines on the place of men and boys in gender equality policies and in policies to combat violence against women, and why it is essential for member states to adopt and implement their objectives. These guidelines are not just an additional layer to existing gender equality frameworks, they are a necessary step forward in ensuring that men and boys are actively engaged as allies, beneficiaries, and agents of change in gender equality efforts. They also align closely with the new Council of Europe Gender Equality Strategy, reinforcing the commitment to a more inclusive and effective approach to gender equality across the whole of Europe. So, why do these guidelines matter? For too long, gender equality has been seen as an issue that primarily concerns women and girls. While it is true that women and girls are disproportionately affected by gender-based discrimination, gender violence, achieving real gender equality requires the involvement of all genders. The Council of Europe guidelines recognize that men and boys have a critical role to play. They emphasize that gender norms and stereotypes harm everyone. Rigid expectations can limit man's participation in caregiving, create unhealthy ideals of masculinity, and contribute to gender-based violence. But also, the guidelines say that men can be powerful allies in advancing gender equality, whether as fathers, teachers, employers, policymakers, or community leaders. Man can influence and shape cultural and institutional change. Engaging men and boys in preventing gender-based violence is of course essential. Violence against women is a systematic issue, and prevention must involve changing societal norms and behavior, something that requires the participation of all men and boys. These guidelines are not standalone recommendations, they are part of a broader vision that is outlined in the new Council of Europe's Gender Equality Strategy 2024 to 2029, which focuses on 6 strategic objectives: preventing and combating gender stereotypes and sexism, preventing and combating violence against women and domestic violence, ensuring equal access to justice, achieving balanced participation of women and men in political and public decision-making, achieving gender mainstreaming in all policy areas and measures, and finally, protecting the rights of women and girls in situations of crisis and conflict. The inclusion of men and boys in gender equality policies directly supports these objectives. If we do not engage men and boys in tackling stereotypes, preventing violence, and ensuring fair representation, we will not achieve the ambitious goals set out in this strategy. The success of these guidelines, they depend on actions at the national level. Member states must not only acknowledge the importance of engaging men and boys, but also take concrete steps to implement policies that reflect this commitment. This means educational reform that challenge harmful gender norms from an early age, workplace policies that promote gender equality, including parental leave for fathers, targeted campaigns that engage men in ending violence against women. We must invest in research to understand the barriers to man's engagement in gender equality efforts, and finally support organizations that work with men and boys on gender equality initiatives. In closing, I want to emphasize that gender equality is not a zero-sum game. Engaging men and boys does not take away from the rights of women, it strengthens them. When men and boys are involved in gender equality policies, everyone benefits. Women, men, children, families, workplaces, and society as a whole. By addressing men's roles in gender-based violence prevention and gender equality efforts, the guidelines help shift the conversation from blame to responsibility and participation. They highlight how patriarchal structures limit man as well, reinforcing harmful masculinities that contribute to violence, inequality, and even the personal struggles of man, such as poor mental health. Moreover, these guidelines ensure that men are not treated merely as obstacles to equality, but as active contributors to progress. This approach fosters more inclusive, constructive dialogues where men see their stake in gender equality not just as supporters of women's rights, but as individuals who also benefit from dismantling rigid gender roles. In short, these guidelines matter because they create a structured, proactive framework for man's involvement. One that avoids tokenism but centers accountability without alienation and ultimately strengthens collective efforts towards gender justice. The Council of Europe has provided these clear guidelines and strong strategic frameworks. Now, it is up to us, policymakers, advocates, and citizens, to ensure that these guidelines are implemented and that gender equality becomes a lived reality across Europe. Let's seize this opportunity to build a more just, equal, and inclusive society for all. Thank you, and best greetings from Iceland.